Hello, everybody, and welcome back into another episode of the Hockey Writers Roundtable season previews as we keep running through the NHL teams as we get ready for the NHL season. And I've got a couple writers from the New York Islanders we're going through today, Nick Rizzo and Mike Fink. First of all, Nick, welcome to YouTube, as we haven't seen you on any of these shows before. How's it going?
Oh, it's going great. I'm happy to be here, getting ready for hockey. 51 days, Islanders opening night, ready to go.
All right. Well, yeah, it's coming, and who knows when people are watching this? The season could be tomorrow, but as we're recording this, it is that long away. But we're going to preview the New York Islanders. And Mike, how's it going? I know you've been on many of these shows, but how's it going right now?
Good. It feels a little different this year. We had a real off season and for a normal one for the first time in a while. So finally learned that August is the recharge the batteries month to get for hockey writers. For us writers, we're busy all year. But yeah, feeling good. Getting ready for the NHL season ahead, which should be a fun one.
Yeah, it should be interesting. As the New York Islanders, they did make the playoffs after a hard battle at the end of the last season, but made it. But then were dispatched pretty quickly. They were eliminated by the Carolina Hurricanes in 6 games. You were up and down kind of in that series. But Carolina was obviously the better team. They got through that, and but Lou Lamoriello didn't do much in the offseason. Probably not much at all. I mean, addition wise, he did re-sign a few guys. Ilya Sorokin, a few pending free agents. Scott Mayfield was re-signed. Pierre Engvall. I mean, kind of took care of business with the players that did have. So looks like he just sees this team as good enough, maybe to make a run at the Stanley Cup, or who knows. But we're going to run through each of the position groups and kind of talk about each of them. We'll start with the forwards and the offense, and a couple new guys, I guess. These guys were traded down on acquisitions, so they're not really. They'll be their first full season with the Islanders, both now long-term contracts, and that's Bo Horvat and Pierre Engvall, both signed. Well, Horvat was a lot earlier, but we'll start with Horvat because he's going to be a pretty big piece of this team. Not just this season, but going forward, because it's a long-term contract he's got. We'll start with you, Nick. What do you see from Bo Horvat coming into this season? I mean, he's not a captain anymore. He was captain of the Vancouver Canucks for quite a while. What do you expect from him going into his first full season with the Islanders?
Well, yeah, I mean, for Bo, it's going to be hard, obviously, for him to top the season he was having in Vancouver. His shooting percentage was off the charts before the trade to the Islanders. But, we saw at the beginning the glimpse of him and Barzal for a short stint, and we saw the potential. We saw the two of them on that top line and what they could do together. And that's the big story going into camp this year is now you got a healthy Barzal, a full year of Horvat. I mean, the big question is who's going to play on that wing, but that's another discussion. But for Horvat himself, I think he just needs to really return to being that playmaker and really helping the Islanders out as far as power play specialist too, because that's something that severely lacked in last year. So, and for Barzal too, I think it's really going to help Barzal. I think that center position sometimes puts a little too much pressure on Barzal, doesn't allow him to play his offensive game. He's very creative with the puck, as you all could see. So I think on the wing, it's a little less pressure, allow him maybe to shoot the puck more, and Horvat get him in more scoring position. So it's a big year for both, no question.
Yeah, first year of his $8.5 million contract as well. Pretty big number for a guy that, he's been pretty consistent. I know that. I mean, I've covered the Vancouver Canucks, so I know Horvat quite well. And I don't want Islanders fans shouldn't expect Horvat to score at the clip he was last season. I mean, he's a consistent 25, 30 goal scorer. If he gets that, be happy, because that's what he usually does. Don't be surprised if he goes down from what he did this past season, but still gonna be that good all around center. And that's a guy that I think the Islanders need long term for sure. All right, Mike, moving on to the other guy that was acquired around the deadline, and that was Pierre Engvall. Was kind of interesting to see. They weren't sure if he was going to re-sign, but Lamoriello saw enough of him and re-signed him to a pretty good contract, $3 million. Not obviously not as much as Horvat, but what do you expect from Engvall going into this season?
Yeah, I think a lot of Islanders fans really like Engvall and what he provided for the offense. He's not your traditional top 6 forward, but He played a top six role alongside Nelson and Palmieri, and really formed a good connection with Palmieri with the two skaters. They're both instinctive shooters, but they complemented each other really well on the forward unit. And it's interesting with Engvall, he's entering his prime years, 20, 27, 28, 27. That's your prime years. You got to get the most out of them. So they got him locked up for those years. And the question is whether the sample size is enough and convincing enough to say, oh yeah, he'll keep doing this for another 7 years or whatever, for as long as you need him to. But he was a pleasant surprise, and he's now going to be really an integral part of this offense moving forward. And the Islanders could really use Engvall and him playing at a high level, especially since he's a good shooter. They don't have as many good shooters as they want. I mean, that's really an issue that goes back to when they let Everly leave in the expansion draft. Haven't had someone like Everly really since then. But Engvall provides that, and it's he's not gonna overwhelm you. He's not gonna be like, oh, a perennial 20-goal scorer, but but he definitely adds that spark, and it's been a nice surprise. He'll play. Hopefully, he'll play along Nelson. We'll see if they move lines around, but it seems like that's a good connection, especially with playing alongside Palmieri for the years to come, for the next few years at least.
For sure. Yeah. I think Engvall, I mean, he was buried in Toronto. I think he kind of was all over the lineup, but ended up, now he's going to have a huge opportunity with New York for sure.
I think he was a third line center there. And then when he moved from the center position to the wing. So, but he's on top six now, which is good for him.
I think he'll have a lot more opportunities for sure with New York than he was with Toronto for sure. Okay. Back to you, Nick. Any storylines, burning questions you have for this forward group? I mean, like I said, they're running back this pretty much the same group at the end of their season and didn't have any success in the playoffs. I guess Lamoriello thinks this group is good enough. Do you think it's good enough? I mean,
no, that's the question, right? Lou consistently, you look at the past 3 off seasons, and it's pretty much been the same roster. Lou's been pretty much status quo over the offseason. He's continually stated he believes in this core group. As a fan and a writer, I don't know if I believe in this core group anymore. At this point, you may have seen the best of them with those back-to-back conference finals runs. You saw a tired group along the year, especially when Barzal went down. Now that they're healthy, going into a new year, I mean, the big question for me is who's going to play on that top wing spot, like I talked about with Horvat and Barzal, and then guys like Oliver Wahlstrom. We really haven't seen much of him, and he had the knee injury last year, missed the entire season, and he was a high draft pick, top 10 first round pick. So, seeing a full season of Wahlstrom, I mean, the kid is a sniper, as we've seen, got great hands. If we could find a goal scorer like him, and if is Zach Parise coming back, another guy who scored 21 goals last year, has yet to officially announce his retirement. So we're waiting on that as well. So basically, where are the Islanders going to find their goals? Where is the consistency going to come from? We know that top line that can produce. We know Brock can produce. Anders Lee's a goal scorer. We need more from Kyle Palmieri, Pajot, Wahlstrom, those type of guys. So it's really all about the consistency.
Yeah, there's some unknowns there too. Like I mean, like I said, there's a lot, and there's not a lot of young guys that are going to come into this lineup. I don't know. I mean, we'll talk about that in a little bit. Mike, what do you think about this forward group? Do they need more, or is it? Do you have any questions about it to going into the season?
Yeah, I think there definitely is the conversation of where they can add or where they can find another forward to add to that, and whether it's a move or not. People talk about whether the Alex DeBrincat talks were real or not, whether they were the team in the trade talks for that reason. I think that was more of from the Senators' perspective what the Senators were looking for. They just needed a second team to work with to make a deal work with the Red Wings. But there's talk about how they're going to inject either youth or another player in through a trade or not. So Dufour would be a player to maybe watch out. But the big questions otherwise are, if they're running it back, is how much of Bo Horvat are we going to see this year? How much of last year with the 7 goals since the trade deadline? are we going to see? And he disappeared in the playoffs. Only one goal, I think, and it was in the garbage time of the game 4 against the Hurricanes. So you really can't count that as like, oh yeah, he scored there. So I think the how is Horvat going to look this year, and how's Barzal going to look? And are we starting to run out of excuses where Barzal, okay, what is his ceiling, and is he going to finally hit his ceiling this year? Especially you have Horvat on your line. Can you form a top line? That's really what all eyes are going to be on. And if Horvat, especially if Horvat can really in a full season, a full training camp, can step up. The comp is Jack Eichel, who when he got traded to the Golden Knights didn't take off at first, and he was also recovering from an injury. But after a full season, a full training camp, really acclimated himself to Vegas, he had a great year. But that's the comp. But I think the only other question I have, and this is something I don't think people are talking about enough, is what the fourth line is going to look like as the year progresses. Because Clutterbuck and Martin are both in their mid-30s at this point, 35 and I believe 33, and they're both on their last year of their contract. And this is the type of year where you could start seeing skaters transition into taking on those fourth line roles. The player I like is Hudson Fasching, maybe playing a fourth line role. He's a good checking defense forward, a good defensive forward who could play that. But over the course of the year, we want to see, is Lane Lambert going to start phasing out Clutterbuck and phasing out Martin to say, like, this is what our future fourth line is going to look like. That's an underrated storyline. So I gave you like 5 just now. What are my burning questions? Those are a few of them for, to digest.
Yeah, there's a few. I think the forward group is probably with the most questions. But you don't know. I mean, I think the addition of Horvat was a good one, because he is that good all around centerman, and I think he will add a lot to this team over the time. I just don't think he'll be as big of a goal scorer as he appeared he was for a bit.
I think the one last thing to know on Horvat is that you mentioned he's a well-rounded center, is that his defensive skills did not wane when he got traded. He was very valuable on the top 6 as a defensive center. So, and you saw that, and you're going to see that next year, at the very least.
Yeah, he'll win faceoffs. That's a given. Okay, let's move on to the defense. And again, no changes really. There could be some new names maybe coming into the lineup, but I think the top 6 is pretty set. Led by Adam Pelech and Ryan Pulak. I hate those 2 names, are just Pelech and Pulak. They're the pillars, but they did add Romanov at the beginning, at the last draft. Had a pretty good season. Noah Dobson, we all know, is an up and coming defenseman. He had another really good season too. Mike, what do you see from this defense? Is it a good enough defense for the playoffs, or, biggest question was Mayfield coming back at that big contract.
In 7 years, you're like, yeah. I don't subscribe to this. I think he's going to be 30, 31. I think he's 30 now, if I'm not mistaken. He'll be 37 when that contract expires. That's like, the difficult thing with Mayfield is his skill sets age well, but you don't want to bet on that. You don't want to bet on a 35-year-old defenseman still playing at a high level, because how many of those can you find? Maybe Brent Burns this past year had a resurgence, so you're like, oh yeah, it could happen to a few players. But the big question really is the defensive unit good enough to win the playoffs? I think it's good enough to win the regular season, but the problem is in the playoffs, where this is where the unit was exposed. When you need it in the playoffs, you need a good defensive unit to play that is not only has the speed to keep up with good offenses, but can open up your offense at the point, and can create at the blue line. You look at a lot of teams that win the cup have at least one defenseman who can take the offense to the next level at the point, and the Islanders don't have that, and that's kind of the burning question entering the season is who can take that next step, and especially on the power play, who can operate the power play at the point, because that power play was abysmal last year. Anyone will tell you for days about how bad the power play was. So, and that really the starting point for an improved power play is who operates power play from the point, and which defenseman are you going to take there. So that's the big question: is it going to step up in the two-way game, and who can help open things up, whether it be Dobson, Pollock with maybe Romanov gets more time on the power play. That'd be a bold one, but you could squint and see that happening. So those are the two. That's really the big question marks for their defense right now.
Yeah, the power play is definitely a thing. I think Dobson for sure is the power play guy, but I do get where you're coming from for sure. Right, Nick, what do you think about the Islanders' defense? I mean, I said there were some new additions last offseason, but nothing this one. Again, Lamoriello thinks this group is good enough. Is it?
Yeah. Obviously, that's the question. So, I agree with Mike, and that's the big question. Really, is that power play quarterback? We need more. This team needs more offense from the blue line. They need a defenseman, starting the rush. They really miss a guy like Nick Leddy. Obviously, you talk about Noah Dobson, and he had, I believe, 49 points last year, 50 the year before. I mean, the kid could play, but one thing that he really struggled in the defensive zone, and we saw it kind of the second half of the year, really struggling in his own zone, not very confident getting the puck out. And, he really struggled in that first round series. I remember even Lane Lambert scratched him for the last 10 minutes of one of the games. I mean, if Dobson could get to form, and Romanov took a big step last year. So he really struggled at the beginning. But when you look at the second half of the season, he was probably the Islanders' strongest defenseman. And, keeping Adam Pelech and Ryan Pulock healthy. And talking about also that bottom pairing, to Sebastian Aho get that last spot. A rookie like Samuel Bolduc make that out of camp. We saw him for a little bit. The kid's clearly got potential. Big frame, 6'4" defenseman. So it's really who can fill that last spot. I think Aho eventually will take it, but those are definitely a couple of issues going into camp.
Yeah, there looks to be one spot that's
right
in contention, unless there's injuries.
Yeah.
I think last year Aho won the job. It was between him and Robin Salo. And Salo at first looked like he won it, then Aho took it, never looked back. Yeah, it's kind of so you expect that the same unless things change at the start of the season, basically.
Yeah, so we'll watch that in camp as it goes. Okay, goaltending again. No changes. Ilya Sorokin is still the starter, and Semyon Varlamov is his backup. Sorokin is clearly a superstar in the NHL, and he's probably going to take the bulk of the load again. Vezina caliber season last year. So, Nick, what do you think about this goaltending? I mean, obviously Sorokin is a star in the league, but can he carry the team to the playoffs?
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, goaltending's strongest part of this team, right? I mean, even when you look at a guy like Semyon Varlamov and the reliability, how reliable of a goalie he's been for the organization, taking them to back-to-back conference finals, and the close relationship between him and Sorokin is obviously so valuable as well. The only thing I ask with Sorokin and the coaching staff is I don't think he can play another 62 games. I think we saw a little bit of a burnout, especially in that first round series. Again, you go back to that. He wasn't himself against Carolina. He didn't seem as dominant as he was all regular season. So if they can maybe give Varlamov more playing time, I mean, Lou did bring the 35-year-old back for 4 more years. Nobody knows why 4 more years, but hey, he's here. You might as well use him. So, and he's very reliable. So I think if Varlamov could play a little bit more, that's going to go a long way for Sorokin. I mean, he's obviously top 3 goalie in the league right now, no question.
Yeah. And it is keeping him rested, and you don't want him tired going into the playoffs. And Varlamov is a capable goalie, like you said, right? Okay, Mike, what do you think about the goaltending? I mean, I've read a lot of your articles. Sorokin, he should have been more of a Vezina consideration, but what do you think about him going into the season, or this tandem?
Yeah. I think I had one piece which basically went through why he should have won the Vezina. And I think the big one was that wins are not a goaltending stat. And I just went through like a bunch of things where I was like, he carried them to the playoffs. I think he puts them in a tough predicament in terms of how you use him, because it's clear he can start as many games as you want. He's one of those goaltenders. There's a few of them, Vasilevsky, Bobrovsky, where Igor Shesterkin also, where if they ask, hey, can you start on 2 games on back-to-back? He'll be like, oh, of course I can, even though it might not be the ideal thing. They're in a tough spot because he can carry them to the playoffs. And if they need him to start every game, he will. question is do you want to keep starting him with where you potentially burn him out? I don't actually. It was very interesting. Nick mentioned that he looked burnt out in the first round. I actually kind of disagree. Where without him in net, he had some very good performances. They don't make a lot of those games close, and a lot of those games were 1-0 games, were 2-1 games, and Sorokin really kept the team in those games. It didn't look burnt out. The question is, do you want to take his load off in the regular season, like maybe 55 instead of 60? But then you run the risk of missing the playoffs. That's your question, because they are going to be a team that's on the borderline, and if you start Sorokin those extra games, you will get yourself into the playoffs with him. With it, I mean, Varlamov could be the backup for those games, but you wonder when he's going to fall off, because he is 35 when that production starts to slide. But that is kind of the goaltending. Like, it raises your floor. Sorokin's going to do that. He's going to get you to the playoffs if you want to start him every game. That's kind of where they are.
The goaltending is interesting in the league now. It's not a one person show anymore. There's a few teams that have that, but you need two goalies, I think, to make it. Okay, now we've looked at all three position groups. Nick, where do they stack up in this division? I mean, this division is tough. The Metro is not an easy division. There's quite a few really good teams. The top with the Carolina Hurricanes, arguably they got better in the offseason. You got the Rangers. You've got quite the Devils are now a force again. I mean, there's a lot of competition. Where do they stack up in the division right now?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, this division is tough. There's no question. I mean, Rangers, Devils, Hurricanes, Penguins. I mean, where does it end? I personally, I think Carolina's going to be at the top of the division. The Devils right there with the Rangers, but I see the Islanders as one of the wild card teams again. I think it's going to be a grind. It's going to take them a full 82, maybe not the full 82 games like this year, but it's going to come down to that last week of the season. They're going to be battling for those bottom two wild card spots. It's going to be very similar. Strong goaltending is going to get them there. Sorokin's going to carry them to a playoff spot. And, hopefully they can get one of those bottom two wild card spots. I think it's going to be a very similar year because it's, like we said, it's a very similar team to last year. So,
barring any crazy trade.
Right? Barring any,
Right, well, that would be great, right?
All right, Mike, do you agree? Are they a wild card team? This, like I say, this division really got, I don't know if it got stronger or just the same, and it was tough last season anyway. So
I always find it funny when people talk about the Eastern Conference being really stacked and the Western Conference not, when the Western Conference has won the cup back-to-back years. It's always funny. Like, that's just a side note, because people are always like, oh, the Eastern Conference is so much better than the Western Conference. Like, hey, all it takes is one really good Western Conference team to make it out.
True.
And they could win it. In terms of the Islanders and the Metro, this is kind of the interesting conversation, because the Metro is better, and it's always easy to say, oh yeah, they're going to take a step back. But again, when you have a good sort of core, you have a good defensive unit, you have a great goaltending unit, your floor is higher. So I think they're in the second tier in their division, which is, so you have the Hurricanes and Devils, like right there in that top tier. They're like the two. When they played each other in that second round, it was like, this is the pinnacle of the Metropolitan Division. This is like the two best teams going at it. Yeah. And I mean, of course, some fans said the Islanders pushed the Hurricanes to 6, but the Devils could only go 5. So that's just more of a tough matchup for anyone they faced. But the Islanders were. But they're in that second tier. They're in that, I'd say, the Penguins, who got Carlson, so they're obviously going to be back in that mix. They were only a few points out of the playoffs to begin with. They're back in the mix. The Rangers, I kind of see them taking a step back after they went all in, and they got Tarasenko, they got Patrick Kane, and Tarasenko's not back, and Kane, it's unlikely he'll be back. I see them kind of taking a step back, and the Islanders are in that tier with them, the Penguins, and it's hard. Yeah, it's hard seeing. Yeah, that after that, you're like, do the Capitals bounce back? It's hard seeing the Capitals doing that, and then the Flyers and the Blue Jackets. So that's tier 3. So they're in that second tier in their division. And then the big question is what the the Atlantic Division looks like, with the Sabres take a big leap, did the Red Wings take a big leap,
Yeah.
the Senators could still, so all those teams, like, what's going to happen there? But they're in that second tier, which I guess is good enough for a wild card spot, or at least
Yeah.
playoff spot.
Yeah. The Atlantic is gonna, that's another story. The Atlantic Division is tough too.
You got previews to get to.
Okay, let's get to our quick fire round. These are fun questions that I'm gonna fire you, and lots of these can be crafted into articles. Have already been written at the Hockey Writers, but these will be quick ones. Nick, we'll start with you for this first one. Pick one or two breakout stars for this season for the Islanders.
I'm gonna guy I talked about earlier, Oliver Wahlstrom. Really high on him coming back for a full year after that knee injury. This kid really is a true goal scorer when you see that shot, that wrist shot. And obviously they're severely lacking that. And the other guy I'm going to go with, Pierre Engvall. I think that coming off like another strong year, he really fit in and found a home on that second line with Nelson and Palmieri. And, signing up to that 7-year deal is a big commitment by Lou. I think you're looking at another 20-25 goal year from Engvall. It'd be great.
Yeah, I can see that, especially, like I say, he's going to have more opportunities.
Yeah.
Hey, Mike, breakout stars.
I mean, it's got to be Wahlstrom, right? It's all he is the X factor on this in this forward unit. Simply put, we haven't seen much of. There's so much unknown still, because last year really doesn't count as a full season. So really, 3 years in the NHL, he's the X factor, and he's the breakout star candidate. Like, can he become a 20 goal scorer or 30 goal scorer with that shot? Can he elevate the power play? Yeah, he's the X factor. He's the breakout star on this team. If I had to pick two like real X factors, I'd say on the defensive end, Sebastian Aho, who was a pleasant surprise last year. Maybe maybe he takes another step forward. And Romanov, maybe if he improves it, because last year in the second half of the season, really everyone really saw like what Romanov can become as. I compare his style to a heat-sinking missile, where he just like he sees the person puck and just like goes right at him. He's gonna level that, and he is very. Fans love him for that. Like he'll take the other forward out of the play, and but like he's a heat-sinking missile, so like doesn't always control it. But those are your X factors.
All right, back to you, Nick. A player that needs to bounce back from last season.
Yeah, so look, you look at last year, and I would say a guy like Casey Cizikas, obviously what he brings every night, the grit, the heart, the defensive play, the energy, that's always been there with Casey. But in years past, he's put up a little better offensive numbers. Even having 20 goals under the year under Barry Trotz's first year with the Islanders. I think Cizikas has, underrated offensive skills. And he gets scoring chances too, because he's always working. He's always the first one in the offensive zone. So, if they can maybe get double-digit goals from Cizikas, I think that would be great.
Yeah, I like Cizikas' game. I've always liked it. So, that would be good for the Islanders for sure. All right, Mike, bounce back candidate for this season.
Bounce back. I don't know if you could really call it a bounce back as much as taking. I kind of want. It's kind of interesting. Like Anders Lee is one of those players that's like. You want to see more, I think is a better way of saying it. Because like he knows where his bread is buttered. And I've actually used that term in an article once, where it's like he hangs out in the dirty areas, waits for his goals to come, and he'll just finish them. Well, you want to see just more from him, especially if he's playing on the top line, where you want to see him become more of a passer, more of a playmaker as well. So more of that. I think last year for that question, I said Anthony Beauvillier, and he got traded. So we don't want to jinx anyone by saying they're the guy who needs to bounce back. Potentially, Andrew Lee gets traded, even though I don't think he can. He has no movement clause.
All right, next we talk about rookies prospect, or no, X factors. I almost skipped one. Nick, an X factor this season. It doesn't have to be a player. It can be the power play, penalty kill. It can be something like that. Coaching. What do you got for next factor?
This is an easy one for the Islanders. It's that power play, the one that ranked 30th in the NHL last year and literally contributed absolutely nothing down the stretch and into the postseason. And for to relate that to a player, Noah Dobson's the X factor, as we talked about. Being that power play quarterback, running that power play, and also being that offensive defenseman, continuing that and getting stronger in his own zone. So I think as far as the power play, no question, biggest X factor, and Noah Dobson as player.
There you go. Connections right there. All right, Mike, what do you got for next factor?
I feel like we just answered this.
You already said it with the breakout.
I was thinking
kind of connects.
I can't repeat it. Now it's like time to squint and see like, okay, who else can be our X factor here? Yeah, I mean, aside from Washington, yeah, I agree with the power play. Who can operate it? I think X factor on the power play, because we're just gonna keep drilling this awful power play from last year.
Terrible.
Yeah. We need to see an identity on this power. They had no direction last year. We didn't know what they were doing. It was like, okay, because usually, okay, Barzal is the puck handler, and okay, that's what the power play is going to look like. Who's going to be the quarterback on? We need to see what the power play is supposed to look like before we can, I guess, criticize it this year.
Yeah. Well, looking at Bo Horvat, he scored a lot of goals in the power play with the Canucks, and if they can kind of craft him being maybe the centerpiece, they may be able to do something. I don't know. That bumper position was his bread and butter last season.
It was something I was wondering, actually, as the offseason started, is with Bo Horvat in the power play. This is maybe you can answer this. Did the Canucks power play make him into a good scorer, or did he make the Canucks power play good? Because this is something I wonder as he went on to the Islanders and just disappeared. Maybe this is something maybe.
I don't know. I think it may be a little bit of both. The Canucks power play still was good when he left. Yeah. I mean, they just put someone else in that bumper position. So I mean, he scored a lot of goals from that spot. I mean, one-timing it or tipping. I mean, that was his office for most of the season. So they can use him in that same position. Maybe I don't know what they did with him on the power play when they had him there, but yeah,
I think they tried the same, but didn't have the same direction. I think that's kind of where I guess you could see the power play improve. And this is why I asked that, because it seemed like the Canucks had a good power play anyway. I guess Quinn Hughes was their point man, right?
And Elias Pettersson there too. So
yeah, and Pettersson. So they need those things. They just need Quinn Hughes and Elias Pettersson.
That's it.
They got Barzal. He's pretty good.
Yeah, Barzal might be the guy then. That in mind.
Yeah. Okay, moving on. Rookie or prospect that could surprise, make the roster of training camp. We'll start with you, Nick, on this one.
Yeah, I'm going to go with defenseman Sammy Bolduc. I wrote about him the other day, how I think, it's a big step for him in his development, seeing some time in the NHL last year. The year before, Barry Trotz raved about him in training camp when he was the Islanders coach, how he loves his size, his big frame. And, he played with confidence when he got called up last year. He definitely struggled a little bit towards the end. I know he, saw a short stint in the series against the Hurricanes, and Lane Lambert, spoke about how he struggled, but it was a good experience for the young defenseman. So, I think he could be one guy that can make the team out of camp. As far as any other blue liners, he's probably the only one.
Yeah, like I said, there's only really one spot available to get. All right, Micah, what do you think? Rookie or prospect could surprise?
Yeah, I guess I'm going to go on the forward side. The all eyes are on two prospects. I mean, there aren't many to choose from, especially since they traded their best one, Aatu Räty. I'm sure you have a lot of opinions on, but I got to go with Dufour. He had Dufour. He had a cup of coffee this year in the with the Islanders, so it doesn't really count. But everyone's seen the upside in the Quebec Junior League, which is you could say that's a little it's not a fair judgment of him, but you see he's got a good promising shot. He could be a goal scorer if he can join the team even midway through the season. He could be one of those young scorers that helps the offense a lot. So Dufour would be the rookie to keep in mind if he can make it.
I like Dufour. I've liked him throughout his junior career, so I'm pulling for him for that as well. Okay, back to you, Nick. A prospect that everyone should be watching this season, and he doesn't have to make the NHL this year, but someone in the system that everyone should be watching.
Definitely Dufour has got to be one of those guys, in Bridgeport right now. Also, a guy I wrote about recently is Matthew Maggio in Windsor. The former captain, his coach raved about him. It was a Mark Savard raved about his game in Windsor. So, that's another guy. But as like Mike said, I mean, the prospect pool is very thin right now. So, other than Maggio and Boldick, and DeFore, there really isn't too much that's almost ready to make the next jump to the NHL.
Yeah, they don't have a lot. One guy I'll throw out is Kelly Odelius. I don't should be watching him. I really like. I didn't think he would drop to the Islanders, but yeah, he's a guy to watch for the future. All right, Mike. Hopefully, I didn't take someone from you, but who do you got to watch?
I wasn't thinking of Odelius, but he's one of those in the bits that we've seen of him. He has a good two-way game to him, which the Islanders could actually use their blue line. So could be. I mean, he's on a longer timetable. One as a defenseman, and two from overseas. So like he's coming from overseas, so it will take a little longer, but he's the guy to watch. I mean, the prospects we mentioned before. Maggio's really the other one to keep an eye out. The question is, did the Ontario Hockey League did those numbers look deceiving because he blew out the competition out of the water with the Windsor Spitfires, but can he do that at the next level? Can he continue to be an elite forward? He's the other guy to watch out for, but can he continue to ascend? Wouldn't be bad for a 5th round pick. Just
for sure. Yeah.
Funny the Islanders farm system. Not great, but Lamoriello has been hitting on these 5th round picks.
Yeah.
He's just keep trading back.
We'll see. I mean, late round picks, I always like late round picks making it. So, all right. This one's a quick one. Who will lead the team in scoring, Nick, on forwards and defense?
Forwards wise, I'm going to go with Barzal. I think the full year with Horvat's going to help him so much. Yeah. Hasn't had a playmaker like that at all. Defense, Noah Dobson.
Yeah.
We talked about him all episode, but he's the key to this power play and, that blue line.
There you go. Mike, you agree, or are you picking a couple other guys?
I'll agree on defense. Dobson's the guy. Really the two-way defenseman on the Islanders. I think in forwards, I'm gonna say Horvat leads them in goals this year. I think if he bounces back and becomes a goal scorer, he'll lead them in goals. And in terms of overall points, I'll still say Brock Nelson. I think it's him until it's kind of like it's him until it isn't, where it's like he'll just consistently, especially in his past years, he's really hit it. He's really rounded out his game in the past 2 years to become that elite points type of player. So I think he'll actually lead the team in points, and Horvat leads in goals. And Barzal will get a mix of both. he'll be up there, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, if Horvat's scoring, I'm thinking Barzal is assisting on them. So, all right. Player that could be traded before the deadline. Nick, what do you think?
Well, for one, if the Islanders are sellers, we talked about that 4th line. Cal Clutterbuck and Matt Martin both entering the last year of their contracts. I don't think they'll be re-signed, but you never know with Lou Lamoriello. Yeah. He likes to give out those long-term extensions to veterans. But, I think those two guys, if the Islanders start entering that seller's market, they could be valuable for a playoff team down the stretch with all that experience. As far as anyone else on the roster, there's not too much I see Lou offloading, unless really the team gets into a selling mode.
Yeah, I don't see it a lot. I'd say probably those two are probably the most likely. Mike, what do you think about trade bait for this coming season?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard seeing Lou selling. So, I mean, it really a lot has to go wrong to say, like, oh, this is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
If they enter that mode, I'd say Pajot and Brock Nelson are maybe the players to watch. With Brock Nelson, his contract expires after he's a free agent in the 2025 offseason. So not in the season, but after next season. And when you mention Brock Nelson in trade, people immediately are like, especially you read a comment section on any article, people are like, you're insane, you're a bad player, never trade him. And you shouldn't. That's agreeable. But he will be, when that contract expires, he'll be 34, 35 in that range. It is coming up. So if everything's going wrong this year, he's the player that you could potentially move and get like 3 pieces in return. It's the player to watch. Pajot's the other one where it's like how much you agree, you think the different cat talks are real or not.
Mhm.
He was discussed as a player that could have been moved. He's another player who's heading into his age 30s, his 30s. So you could potentially see him also being moved. Those are the two, I guess I'd say, if everything's going wrong, see, like, watch out for them.
Hopefully it doesn't get to that point. All right. Last question of the episode. And I love these ones. These are always fun. Nick, a bold prediction or a hot take for this coming season?
Bold prediction. I'm going to say Ilya Sorokin continues that strong season, and even better, he wins the Vezina Trophy this year.
Nice. Mike, what do you think? Bold prediction.
I was thinking, how bold would that be if he finished second? I was going to say, like, oh yeah, Sorokin wins. I mean, yeah, he should have won last year. So I think he'll finish as a finalist again. That's not. But bold prediction. I think one that could be good. A bold one is Bo Horvat is a 40-goal scorer.
Whoa, that's a big one.
It would be wild. I think the real bold prediction is he has a Jack Eichel-like year where, after fully acclimating a full training camp, and I think, again, important to keep in mind, he moved from Vancouver he moved all across country, different country, different time zone, and had to acclimate in pretty much 1 month or a few months to say, like, this is your new team, new system, everything. Now he's got a full training camp, has his house on the island. It could be ready for a big year ahead, and he just has another big year. That's the bold prediction, I guess.
He was on pace for 50 goals at one point.
It's crazy to think about, right? When he was having that ridiculous of a shooting percentage.
Yeah. I was just blown away how he just kept scoring. It was just insane. But it's gonna be interesting. We talked about Horvat a lot in this episode, so for good reason. He's gonna be a big part of this team going into this season and in the future. So, but thanks, Nick. Thanks, Mike, for coming on the show and previewing the Islanders. Before we get out of here, Nick, where can everyone find you on social media, and where can everyone come find your stuff?
Yeah, you follow me on Twitter, nrizzo28, and check out my articles on thehockeywriters.com.
All right, Mike, same thing, social media. And
I think Twitter's still up. I just double checking that it didn't crash. I think I'm at Finks_thoughts there. I also got Threads, which is the new thing. Mike Fink_hockey writer, which I guess means I also have Instagram. I don't really use it though, because in order to get Threads, you had to get it. So find me on those two places. I post about hockey and post about the Islanders there, all the articles and some general NHL stuff too, which Matthew loves editing as he experienced.
All right. Well, yeah, check out all their Nick and Mike's stuff over at the Hockey Writers as well, and New York Islanders preview articles, and check out everyone that covers the Islanders there. I believe both of you are the only two, actually. So you've got them right here. But make sure you're checking out all the preview stuff at thehockeywriters.com, and follow the YouTube channel and subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. Give this video a like, comment below, and you can answer all those quick fire questions yourself and give us your thoughts as well. And keep it locked here, where we're going to keep doing these preview shows until the beginning of the regular season. Try to get all 32 teams done. But make sure you're checking all them out, or if you just wanted to check out this Islanders one, thanks for tuning in. And until next time, we'll see you on another Hockey Writers Roundtable season preview edition.